If you have a hard time with boundaries, how might your life be different if you could say no as easily as a joyful yes? I'm Love Coach Mariya, and for over a decade now, I've been encouraging folks to empower their compassion so it's big enough for ourselves as well as others, and so our boundaries can become healthier than ever. You're listening to Empower Your Compassion, and on this show, we'll be unlocking transformative insights to help you reconnect to your true yes, so you can say no from that more expansive energy and get more of what you want in your relationships and your life without sacrificing your compassion. Are you ready for more love? Let's grow. Hello, gorgeous. I hope you're doing well. I'm very excited to share with you a good friend of mine. Her name is Sara Kidwell, and she's a holistic executive coach who helps high-capacity women leave hustle culture behind and create a softer, more intentional, and abundant way of life. She blends business strategy, mindset, well-being, and intuitive practices to support whole person transformation in life and business. So I knew she would be a great fit for this ongoing discussion about healthy boundaries. Please join me in welcoming Sara to the show. Welcome, Sara. Thank you so much for joining. I'm delighted to have you on the show today.
So glad to be here with you.
Awesome. So I understand that you really like helping women, especially high capacity women, lead. I love that you're always talking about a softer life, a gentler, more intentional, and consequently more abundant life as well. And one of the things that I really love about boundaries is that it's not just about saying no, it's about reconnecting to your yes, and then letting the boundaries serve as supports for that yes. So how do you find boundaries tend to come up in your own life or in your work life or with your clients?
Yeah. So, really, when I think about boundaries and what it takes to create a softer life, first I want to lean into what is a softer life. People hear that term, and for some, it resonates deeply, and they think, oh, yes, I want that. And others are like, I have no idea what that even means. And so, really, when I'm talking about a softer life, it's really the opposite of what a hustle culture life would look like, where we are on a daily grind, where we're just on this constant hamster wheel of doing and feeling like we need to constantly be achieving and checking off a to-do list. And that leads to a lot of exhaustion when we're stuck in those cycles. And so the opposite of that would be when life doesn't quite feel so hard and monotonous or grinding at times, when we actually feel like we are living in our alignment, in our flow, and in our purpose, where things start to have an ease to them and things feel like, okay, I can show up. Sometimes my presence is enough. I feel like I'm operating from a place of joy and groundedness. And that is a very different life. And in order to actually create that life for yourself, you have to start to implement some boundaries and create standards for creating that life that you want to live. And so that's really what I focus on when I help women create their desired futures and the work that I've done in my own life. I've been through a few different reinventions in my life, and this has always been a part of the process. What do I need to remove from my life? What do I need to say yes to and lean in more? And what are the tension points that are really starting to surface that are saying, hey, my nervous system is a wreck right now. And that is something that I know it's like I'm dysregulated, I'm feeling out of alignment. These are the things that start to bubble up. So I just want to start there so that we have a level set on what is a softer life and how do we start to feel into what that could look like.
Excellent. Yeah. And I have definitely found hustle culture to be a big fat boundary for me. I'm not available for it. And anytime I feel myself starting to get into that, I call it a forceful energy. I notice that it's like you're gripping and controlling and I gotta make it happen. And then it's all about, it's the very masculine yang, doing vibe. And then I don't like how it feels in my body. And so, a term I use a lot is spaciousness. I've really come to value and protect and prioritize having spaciousness in my body, in my schedule, in the way that I do things. And some of that has been learning to accept the fact that I can't do 10 things in a day. In fact, I probably can't even do 5 things in a day. I can probably do 2 to 4. And so, in terms of what sort of commitments or offers or opportunities you agree to, when you look at your calendar and you see that as capacity and you understand like how much you can actually fit in there while still feeling soft and spacious, like that's where those boundaries start to go up. And it's like, no, I'm going to have to turn that down because it doesn't fit like, sure, I could cram it in there, but it's not worth the trade-off.
Right. That's right. Hearing you say all of that, I'll say a memory just comes flooding back for me. When I was living in Nashville and I was leading a $20 million P&L, and my days were so jam-packed. It was meeting after meeting, and I got to the point where I had to schedule meetings that would start 10 minutes after the hour, so I, in hopes, could maybe have a 10-minute window in between some meetings. And my assistant was scheduling bathroom breaks and bringing me, refilling water. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. This is out of control, right? And then other things start to pop up in the process, not just schedule wise, but then I started to feel into, is my life here really in alignment with my core values? And is this place where I'm working in alignment with my core values? And when you start to notice things like you start to actually feel your feelings, that's really how we start to create awareness around where do we need these boundaries and standards. And I tell my clients all the time, when you start to notice anger and frustration, these are the moments when you have to lean in and say, something is out of alignment for me. What boundary do I need to set? What standard do I need to create for my life? Because this isn't working right now. And sometimes we allow ourselves to stay in that place a really long time before we're actually finally ready to do it, right? Because it's this familiar pain. And that familiar pain is like, well, I'm kind of used to this, and it's going to be also painful to break out of it and do something different. What does that look like?
Absolutely. And it's so funny because the brain will pretty much always, like on default, prioritize the familiar over beneficial, safe, joyful. Like if it's familiar, it doesn't matter if it's unsafe or if it's not fun and it's unfortunate because that will leave us recreating a lot of dysfunctional patterns in our lives and perpetuating them.
And I feel like that starts to show up a lot of times with coping mechanisms.
Yep.
When we start to realize, okay, I am doom scrolling. I mean, how it was showing up for me is I was like, I need that nightly glass of wine to come off of my day. And
Mm.
it's like, there was a point where it was like, okay, this became such a habit that it was like, I need this to start to come down off of the day to ease me into like, okay, I'm not at work anymore, although I was still answering emails and text messages, right? Maybe lying to myself about I was off of work.
Mm.
But I think that I had to start to pay attention to what are the coping mechanisms that are coming up that are saying, hey, this is not in alignment and I'm still trying to make it work. And these situations are not easy. They are difficult. I was in a golden handcuff situation where there was so much about what I was doing that I absolutely loved. And the
Mm.
day to day with the people that I worked with and the things that we were doing and the work that I got to do felt, really alive. But there were certain aspects of it where I was like, these other parts over here are out of alignment. And acknowledging that was saying, hey, I may have to leave this world, leave this job, leave something where I am in a lot of abundance right now financially and make a change because there's other parts of my life that are feeling out of alignment. And those are the times when we find ourselves like, how long are we willing to stay in these moments of coping
Mm.
patterns or nervous system dysregulation because it's like, ooh, this is going to be painful to make a really big change, right? And I think I'll say this about realizing when you're in these moments, this is when it's so important to reach for people.
Mm.
Reach for trusted people, reach for therapists, reach for coaches, reach for people that are mentors, guides, people that you know can help you on this journey, that can help be that mirror that you can also be really honest with about like what's showing up with you in your life. And you don't have to be alone in this process. But it is a very brave thing to go through when you're finally like, I don't want to do this anymore. I am so done with this constant grind. I
Yeah.
have to choose differently. I am scared and I don't know what to do next. Don't be lonely in it. Reach
Mm.
for someone.
Absolutely. Great advice. Hey friends, real quick, in case you're busy, which you probably are if you have a hard time with boundaries, I just wanted to make sure you know that you can go to boundariesthatfeelgood.com and download a free resource for making boundaries easier without sacrificing your compassion. Again, that's boundariesthatfeelgood.com. Okay, let's get back to the show. At one point, you asked kind of introspectively, like, how long are you going to how long are you going to be in this misalignment and, these not so great coping mechanisms just for the parts that do feel in alignment. And I do find that A, it takes the time it takes, and B, what tends to be the tipping point is when it gets more uncomfortable to stay in it than to change. And, you talked about learning how to sort of connect to your body and be in your body and build up that sort of like overall situational awareness by having some like nervous system awareness and just like noticing if you're emotionally dysregulated or physiologically dysregulated. And having that connection to your body can really help also with learning how to discern the difference between safe and unsafe discomfort. Because we are going to deal with a lot of discomfort in life, and change is going to be uncomfortable. And staying in a dysfunctional dynamic can also be uncomfortable. And so you just got to figure out like which discomfort is going to serve you to kind of like lean into. And I will say that before I was in my body, I used to lean into unsafe discomfort, thinking that it was actually supporting my growth when really it was just perpetuating this pattern. For me, in this case, it was, this idea that I needed to earn love or energy or attention or whatever it was. And that's, I think, what fuels the hustle culture a lot as well.
Yeah, it's that constant achieving mode, and it really disconnects us from our body. And I'll
Yeah.
say when I was in that world, I wasn't connected to my feelings. My main emotions were I am either angry and pissed off or I'm happy. Like everything's great, right? I'm joyful. And it's like those two feelings were what I kind of primarily felt. And when I actually started doing feelings work myself, I did feelings and heart work for 2 years in a group setting, which was really impactful for me. And I use like a 8 feelings framework. And those 8 feelings are a foundation of you can have all these different things that you might think you're feeling, but really when it distills down, there's just 8 of those. And I'll list them off so you can see kind of if they connect, but it's anger, it's sad, it's lonely, it's fear, it's glad, it's guilt, it's shame, and it's hurt.
Hmm.
And a lot of times we want to say, "Oh, I'm upset," or "I'm frustrated." We might use these words that are like softer. As women, I know we tend to do this,
Mhm.
and it's really helped me to dig into, no, I am really angry. I am angry, and it's okay to be angry. That's my emotion. That is a gift to me. That anger is my gift. It's
Hmm.
telling me, it's giving me information about what feels alive or what feels full of tension for me. And that feeling upset, oh, that's me feeling hurt. Something has hurt me. Maybe it's just a little, maybe it's some deep hurt, but if I can recognize that, then I can start to feel into acknowledging what my emotions are and also feel into like where is it showing up in my body, like being able to sit with and ask myself questions like, oh, I'm feeling that in my chest, or like that's giving me butterflies, or like my stomach just flipped, or my legs are super tight right now as I'm like holding so much tension just thinking about this project or this difficult conversation I've got to have with this person, right? Or my head is like throbbing because I'm just overthinking and ruminating. And I think when we can start to put these pieces together between what's happening in our life, the feelings that we're feeling, and how they're showing up in our body, that is incredible information about what we need in order to get into our alignment.
Absolutely. Like compass headings.
That's right.
I think another benefit of getting into your body, when you're able to, and it took me a while, like when I first encountered people, not even talking about it, but demonstrating it, like I would be in these practice groups of all this sort of like interrelated, self-connected things. And people would kind of go around and share what they were experiencing. And I was not embodied yet. I was still very disconnected and just in my head all the time. So what I was experiencing were my thoughts and stories and memories and mental cognitive connections and things like that. And some people would, when they would share, they'd be like, "Oh, I'm feeling like this heaviness in my stomach," and I'm like, "How are you doing that?" I was like, "What?" If I had to check in on my body, I'd be like, "I don't know. I guess I noticed some things," but it was so awkward and weird. It was definitely a journey for me to get into my body. But I will say that being able to notice, for example, that you're having some heaviness in your stomach or your gut or some tingliness in your heart, two things that I think are really beneficial for that is that, especially if it's more sort of a negative type of emotion that you're experiencing in your body, it can help alert you to like a potential like off ramp where the emotions sort of hijack your brain and your stories and your life for an hour, a day, or week. Um, so that can kind of help alert you, but also in the moment, just getting into the practice of figuring out where you feel things in your body, regardless of what you discover there. It's the practice of shifting your attention off of your thinking mind and into your body that sort of disrupts the way that the stories our mind constantly churns out can have that physiological cascade on us as well. So just taking a moment to just be in your body and feel the experience of it. I like to say that emotions are two parts. There's stories in the mind and feelings in the body. And if you can just be with the feeling in the body, you can disrupt that story. And that's when you get into that thing that folks may have heard about. If you're really just sitting with an emotion, it'll pass in like 90 seconds. It's because you've disrupted the story, and getting into your body can really, really help with that. And that gives you the power of choice and control. And that's where you get to respond instead of react.
I love that. I think sometimes it's hard to take that pause enough to check in. I
Hmm.
think when I was first learning how to do this work and feel into where I was feeling things in my body and actually feeling my feelings, I had to intentionally set a timer for 3 minutes. And even because I was like, it more than that felt overwhelming sometimes of like, hey, I just need this like check-in of let me just be quiet a little bit and sit with myself in some silence. And it's going to feel really uncomfy in the beginning as I do this. But I didn't really know, it was hard for me to break out of this pattern of overthinking and then just moving on to the next task, or I'm just going to open my phone, or I'm going to text this person back, or you get into like, oh, I'm going to go eat something. Like I'm going to go open the fridge. I mean, you can find a million things to do instead of checking in with yourself. And I think that, actually be intentional, set just 3 minutes on a timer and start there was like really impactful for me. And I'm curious, was there something that you did that was really impactful for you when you said you were in that room and you were like, how are they feeling into this? Like I'm in my head right now. How did you move into feeling in your body?
I love that 3 minute timer, by the way. And it's definitely a thing where the mind, I, it's not really a PC term because I mean, no disrespect to sex workers, but I do like to say that the ego is an attention whore. It
Mm,
really, really wants you to keep your attention on the mind because that's where the ego resides. And so anytime you think about getting into your body is when you're going to come up with all of the excuses. No, I'll just grab some food. I don't need to do it. It's not worth it. And really, it's just your ego manipulating you to stay with it, to stay in the mind, stay with the stories, stay with the drama. Don't abandon the ego to go be in your body for a moment. But which is why I think you have to be extra intentional about making it happen. And it's just, you just got to do it. In yoga, they often talk about the hardest part is just getting on the mat. And I think that's very true. So for me, I think it was maybe a small variety of things over a couple of years, just that kind of built on each other, different perspectives I learned from different teachers and guides, and some practices as well. I think for me, one of the most impactful ones was doing like a chakra meditation. I was just, part of it, the motivation was really just to kind of learn my chakras better and like develop a relationship with them and feel into them. And I found that sitting down and spending, working from the bottom up and just like spending some time in each of those energy centers really helped me develop the relationship with my body.
I love that. Something new that I'm playing around with, and it's kind of helping me get out of my head a little bit when I'm stuck in like, should I do something or should I not do something? And I kind of ask myself questions. Is this how I should be spending my time? Should I show up to this event? Should I,
Mhm.
really I want to get like a quick yes or no, but
Mhm.
sometimes my mind wants to take over and I need to be able to feel it in my body. And so instead of saying yes or no when I ask myself questions, I have a more deep guttural, like a sound response of mm-hmm, mm-hmm, or mm-mm, or as maybe, right? So it's like there's a yes, no, maybe, but it's like, what is the first sound that wants to come out when I ask myself, do I want to go to this event? Mm-mm.
I
Or
love
is
that.
this person, does this connection really seem alive for me? Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh.
Right. Right.
That's pretty
And
cool.
it starts to really ground me, connect me, and help me connect my heart and brain and body kind of all in one when things feel like they're swirling. And so I'll say it's a new thing for me that I'm trying
Mhm.
out right now, and I'm finding a lot of value in it.
That's amazing. I like bypassing the verbal part of your brain too, because that gets, the cognitive, machine starts whirring up when you try and come up with words, which can be helpful and cathartic. I'm into journaling and all that, but sometimes just going for something, and I like that it still, involves the throat chakra, which is like your expression of truth, but you don't have to access the verbal part of your brain. That's super cool. I like that.
Yeah, that's right.
Something you had mentioned earlier also reminded me of a related life experience in general. You're talking about the golden handcuffs situation and being in a job that was really rewarding on a lot of levels, but also kind of dysregulating and resulting in you needing to implement some coping mechanisms that maybe weren't so great.
Mhm.
And one of the things that came to my mind was like a romantic relationship can also be like that. Like it can be great on paper or it can be great in a lot of ways, but it's not fully aligned. And similarly, we can spend a lot of time in a relationship that's like good-ish, but not really good enough. And I like to think of alignment as a path because we're constantly, on the timeline, we're constantly moving through life. And so if you're walking on your path of alignment, you're going this way. And if you are with a partner or a business or any situation, if it's parallel, it
Mhm.
works. If that path of alignment is parallel with theirs, it's great. But if it's divergent, you might not notice it in the beginning at first, but the further you go down those paths, the more divergent they become. And the only way to stay in that situation is for one or both of you to step out of your alignment. And if if one part is misaligned, the total is misaligned, right? Because
Mhm.
for it to be aligned, they both have to be in alignment. And so when it's not aligned, it's literally not sustainable. It will fall apart. And how far you go down the not your path, like is how
Mm.
much is it going to rip out of you?
Yeah. I love that you brought that up in the relationship container and to look at it that way because you are going to be maybe degrees different, like as you are both growing and on your own paths. And it's like, how much of that allows you to at points come closer together
Hmm.
because there's some connection there. And like, hey, I'm starting to expand. I'm starting to push against the edges of my current world. And I'm going to be changing and evolving. And what is this experience going to be like for you?
Hmm.
Because you may be evolving and changing in two different directions, or you can appreciate it and be like, God, I'm so proud of you for evolving in that way. And like, what does this mean for us? How do we continue to have this relationship while we're both on our path, while we're both growing, right? Because I don't know that every partner that we're meant to be with, whether that's romantic or friendship, it's like that we are in parallel. But it's like there's this appreciation for your path, my path, and the ways in which it makes sense. And life is fluid. I think our culture is obsessed with forever and the constructs and confines that our world has created around contracts, right? Around looking at how we put together marriages and partnerships and all of those things. And I think those for some people are beautiful and feel so wonderfully safe, and for others, not quite as much. And so when you do start to feel things veer off, it's like, is this information of this is no longer for me? Or is this, hey, we're in a sticky spot of growth and it's going to need a lot more communication? And I'll say that that was, what began to show up for me in that corporate setting of, hey, my core values are no longer in alignment with this organization. And I am changing and growing, and my definition of how I want to show up and how I want to love people. And we were at odds, and that, I had to take that as information and say, this is no longer in alignment. And I am not expecting them to change in any way. This is a corporate relationship, right? But I love how you brought it up with how this relates in a relationship because I think that there is so much correlation and moments in our life where we've got to like really be honest with ourselves. Otherwise, we continue to stay in something that is more and more out of alignment. And the longer that we stay, the more costly it can become for us, right? That cost of staying, a lot of times we get stuck in like the sunk cost mentality. I've already poured so much into this, and there's some things that are hitting right here. So maybe I can make it work. Maybe I can stay a little bit longer, right? And then you start to notice the coping or the dysregulation come up, and you realize, oh, this is not in alignment for me. But sometimes we try to make it work, and the degree that we stay in longer than we should, we have to acknowledge the cost that will come on the other end when it comes to untangling, unraveling, and healing on the other end, that level of trauma as a result of staying in something too long.
Been there. I saw a really great quote the other day, and I don't remember it precisely, but it was something to the effect of the longer you stay on the wrong train, the more expensive the ticket back is.
Oh, oh, that's a good one. I'm taking that one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
And it's tricky
yeah.
though, because and I want to call this out because I think one of the most difficult and worthwhile challenges in life is balance. And I don't just mean like work-life balance type things, but like balance between extremes. And it shows up all over the place. So, in this case, it's like on one extreme, we stay way too long in a bad situation or the misaligned situation. In the other extreme, we're like hyper disposable with all of our relationships, whether they're work or romantic or friendships. And it's just like, oh, that's not working for me, and you ditch it. And you're just when you're that disposable with things, like
Mm.
that'll eat away your soul too, because then you don't build anything lasting. And it's like one of the reasons I stayed too long in a dysfunctional relationship was because I knew that relationships take work. And I think I tried a little too hard in a sense. Like I did more than, well, frankly, than the other was doing. And that's definitely something to note. I think any healthy relationship is going to have balance in the sense of both sides being engaged and willing to make it work or agree that there is no course of action that is in mutual alignment. But yeah, it's a balance, man, all the time.
Truly. Thanks for sharing that and kind of talking about what came up for you just personally with that. Has that shown up for you in a business way as well?
Yeah, actually, this story's been coming up frequently. I guess, I mean, gosh, it was just in August. So what is it? 6 months ago, 5.5 months ago. Um, I, yeah, I was in a very misaligned job and it wasn't, there's so many parallels. It's funny. It wasn't so bad that I needed to like run for the hills. And I was working on creating, a new foundation to transition into. Um, and that was taking longer than I wanted, not just because I was impatient, but because that other job was becoming increasingly misaligned to the fact that I was having heart palpitations and I think maybe panic attacks, like was not going well. But I was like, I gotta stick with it. I gotta stick with it until I have something to step onto. And um, on top of all of that, there was a scenario where there was something that they kept having me fill in for that was absolutely not aligned for me at all. And I told them, I was like, I don't want to keep doing this. I get that you can't fix it right now, but I want it known that I don't want to keep doing this. 2 weeks later, they're like, we're actually going to have you do that full time. And I was like, no, it's time to go. It took me about an hour or two to wrestle with that decision, but ultimately it was the cost of my self-trust that wasn't worth it. So, a little tangent, I think it's really important to go through a phase in your life. Typically, I would say like mid 20s to mid 30s is good, where you are maybe challenging yourself a little bit, like questioning yourself. Like if you're a no to something, it's like, are you just afraid? Are you just perpetuating old patterns or is it actually in service? Do that sort of questioning and introspection. But if you do that for about a decade, then it's important to shift gears and like graduate yourself. And I think I maybe took a little too long. I got very much into the habit of like deferring to outside sources of authority and expertise and, questioning everything I was doing. Like, is this really serving me or is this an old pattern? And um, I don't remember exactly how I came to it, but I was just there was a shift and I was like, I think it's time to start acknowledging my own expertise and recognizing that I've done enough self-inquiry that I now know myself and can trust myself. And so for about a year or two, was very much committed to like, if I'm a no, I'm not going to question it. I'm going to allow myself to be a no. I'm going to be a yes to my no. And partly for my inner child, like telling her, demonstrating to her that I'm not going to make her do anything she doesn't want to do, and building up all of that self-trust. So culminating then in that moment of them telling me to do a thing I had already not just told them, but like told myself and put out into the world that I was a no to. I was like, I can't go back on that. The cost of my self-trust is not worth it.
And I wonder at times when we're served up with these moments, can we see them for what they are? That was a gift that was given to you in that moment that allowed
Sure.
you to probably shortcut a process that you may have allowed to lengthen on its own. But it was like you got served up this gift of clarity of they now told you that this new, role you were going to be required to do the very thing that you didn't want to do and you had already set that boundary with yourself. I'm not going to do this. What a gift that is. And in the moment, I imagine, you tell me, there's probably a lot of like fear that came up of, oh my gosh, well now I have to make a move. I have to step out. I have to think through financially what this decision means for me and my next move for my career. But it's like those moments are the line in the sand where it's like, oh no, I know what I have to do now. And I have to honor myself. I can't abandon myself in this moment. I've got to say yes. I am actually going to take this as a gift. I'm going to take this as information. I'm going to take this as out of alignment. I'm moving towards my alignment, and I'm going to have to take some big, brave steps. So, did it tell me more about did it show up for you in that way?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. All of those things happened and were considered in those like 1 to 2 hours of making that decision of how to proceed. And basically noticing that there was fear in every direction. And so then just kind of picking apart like, what were the things that were really at stake in the choices I had available to me. And when the cost of eroding my self-trust was made plain, the decision was no longer hard. Um, and on the flip side, speaking of the gift, one of the reasons I was sticking with that job way past its expiration was because of a prior experience of being unemployed, trying to build my dream life, going bankrupt, and feeling like I had totally failed. And I was like terrified of going back into that same situation. But the moment that I decided I had to leave, it's like it felt like I was stepping back into a previous situation that, I had a story of failure around. And then as like the days went on and every step I took into that situation, I saw how very different it was, how very different I was. I mean, that was like 9 or 10 years prior. It was the circumstances were different. Yeah. And so it was also really affirming that like I'm not gonna make the same mistakes because I learned from it. I actually did.
Yes.
And I've grown a lot since then. I'm a very different person. They say no man crosses the same river twice because the man's not the same and the river's not the same.
Yes. I love that saying. And I think we've got the gift of time and wisdom over time, right? And so you were talking about people like kind of when they're in their 20s to, mid 30s and kind of how they're starting to like feel into things and think about life. And I think now as I look at my life, I'm 47, and when I think about all that I have been through, all the twists, all the turns, all the reinventions along the way, all of the things that I was hoping would come to fruition and they didn't, but something else came true. And it was like, now that hindsight is so beautiful. And because it's happened again and again and again, I can lean further into trusting myself and the universe, God, that things will be okay. I have this trusting and this deep inner knowing that life will unfold as it needs to if I can keep myself in alignment, if I can ground myself, if I can be true to myself, if I can keep moving forward with gratitude, things will be okay. And I think that it's like I can look back, even on when I think about looking back on this last year, and the peaks and the valleys and all the twists and turns that happened. I have so much gratitude for some of the things that caused me great frustration that didn't come to, I had a big thing, collab that didn't come together at the last minute. And it was one of those things that I had to draw a very clear standard around because I realized this was no longer in alignment for me. And at the last minute, I had to back away from it. And I was so disappointed. And at the same time, I knew that was the right decision. And then now I can look back and go, this is the reason why that didn't come together. Because if I was doing that, I wouldn't have the space to do this amazing thing that came along. And I just think that's the tension that we hold as we walk through life of like, oh, I don't want to mess up or I don't want to miss this opportunity. And it's like, no, I am trusting that what is meant for me will be for me. And like, I am leaning into that. So I think there is this gift that comes when we have these lived experiences over time where we can say, okay, I can let things go a little bit more. I can rest in knowing that things will align as long as I am being true to me and I'm not abandoning me.
Mhm. Yes, I am finding a lot of gratitude for my age and lived experiences. And honestly, like you can't notice a pattern until there's been enough instance of it to see that it's a pattern. And whether that pattern is a faulty coping mechanism or a pattern of everything eventually working out in your favor, or, whatever it is. I think there's definitely a lot of benefit to old age, older, getting
Thanks
older.
for that. Thanks for that.
Yes. Advanced stages of life that are, just full of more experience and wisdom. And it is really encouraging. And, you mentioned my interpretation of what you said is like, my job is just to show up. My job is to seek and maintain and restore alignment, because it is sort of a living meditation,
Yes.
just like in a seated meditation, your thoughts are going to distract you. And the idea is to return to stillness, not be in stillness, but returning over and over again is the practice. And so like in a living meditation, whatever your intention is, life's going to pull you off of it over and over again. And the practice is just returning over and over again to our alignment. And tying back in something you mentioned earlier is that we also don't have to do that alone. And whether it's, even just having some sort of like active surrender to like our higher selves, our wisdom, our intuition, a higher power, something else that can really guide us and help us find that alignment, especially people, who know you well, or who you have spent enough time with to clarify what your values and goals are, and they can help you restore that, is really, really valuable. So want to be mindful of time as well. And I know you've got other things on your plate today. So segue with that value of support in helping us maintain our own alignment. What are some of the things that you offer to the world?
Yeah, I would love to tell you about what I offer. And I'll say this about
Mhm.
how I think about it in terms of my own life and what I do in
Mhm.
terms of how I create this for me and then how I create this with the women that I work with.
Sure.
But I think it takes so many different tools in our tool belt,
Mhm.
different guides, different teachers, gurus, practices along the way. And I am thirsty and hungry for knowledge and things that help me continue to grow and expand in what I do. And so I have my own guides and coaches and therapists and people that help me along my journey. And so for anyone listening, I just encourage you to lean into that. And I think that talk therapy is so beautiful. I absolutely love it. And I think that somatic healing work is also really important to pair with it. And that can be EFT tapping, that can be breath work, that can be ways in which you are really feeling into your body and practices there. And for some people, that's also, they find yoga very meditative in that way. So I would say that living a life where this is just a pattern, and one of my mantras is I attract people that help me on my journey.
Mm.
And so I know that there are going to be people that come into my life, that come into my field that are meant to help me. And I feel into that. I'm like, do our energies align? I really feel into, is this someone that I need to be working with and learning from? And I do this for my benefit. And then I also do this for the benefit of the women that I work with. I'm out there trying out all of these different things and practices and then putting them into practice in my own life and then with the women that I work with. And so, the way that I work with women is two ways. I do one-on-one coaching, but I also do cohorts. And cohorts are a really magical container that's created with 4 to 6 women in each of those containers. And I curate those really based on energy and tension point of where they are in their life. So they may be in different life stages, maybe even different roles. Some of my groups, the energy of the universe sends me, I've got a group of founders or a group of executive women or a mixture of both, but these are curated in such a way that we're about to embark on a 5 month journey together. And in that journey, we're going to give ourselves permission to get clarity about the desired future that we want.
Mm.
And that is a process. And we've got to do heart and feelings work in order to be able to feel into what is out of alignment today, what needs to feel more in alignment, and really giving ourselves permission to feel into what that could look like. So many times our life has been curated as a result of people pleasing. and abandonment, or going along with what our culture thinks that we should do. And so, if we can look at things through a fresh lens and really start to lean into what is it that I really desire? What lights me up? What makes me feel alive? And then move into what are the barriers and blockers and limiting beliefs that are in my way? And how do I begin to unlock those? And I bring in somatic work for this. This is a really important part of doing that work. And then we move into how do I manifest this life? How do I begin to embody this future me that I know I deserve to become? And it's a beautiful process, and it's not linear, though that follows a pattern. It spirals back on itself, and there's things that get touched again as we go through that 5 month process. And what I've done is I've taken one of my reinventions that took me about 4 years. It was a pretty total reinvention in a lot of areas of my life and caused pretty dramatic change. And I'm really proud of that work that I've done. And now I get to live a life where I just pinch myself every day. So grateful for all of that work that I did to create what I have now. It is so worth it. And what I did was I thought about what all happened in the span of this 4 years, and can I condense this into a journey that's shorter in a way that is guided, that you're not alone. You have some one on one time with me, but you also have community with other women that are going through this. And there's a level of a bravery that happens. There's a level of accountability. There's a level of just less lonely when you're in community, when you can say, like, oh, yeah, I'm really struggling and dealing with these things. And you've created a container that is immensely confidential and safe,
Mm.
where you can show up with things. And I have women say all the time, I've never said this out loud.
Mm.
Or, I don't have anyone to say these things to, but I need to show up here with this. And it's like we work through things in a way so that you can come out on the other side. And I'll tell you that the women that fully lock into the process, the most beautiful transformations, and they all doubt it coming in. The one thing I hear is, I don't know if I belong here. I don't know if I belong in the room, And it's like, there's this sense of, do I belong? It's like, do I even deserve to give this to myself?
Mm.
It's like, yes, you are worthy of living a life that you absolutely love. And so that process and that journey is something you can tell I'm super passionate about it. I absolutely love it. I mean, it lights me up to see these women just in tears about what their life can be now because they allowed themselves to go through the journey. So that's the work that I do, and I absolutely adore it. And I loved getting the chance to talk with you about it today.
Thank you so much for sharing all of that. And the best place to find you, it sounds like, is going to be LinkedIn or your website, which I can link in the show notes for sure.
Yeah, that's it. Solotogethercoaching.com.
Excellent. Well, thank you again so much, Sarah, for your time and connection today. I really appreciate it. And I look forward to seeing you again in the near future, I'm sure.
Thank you, Mariya. This was wonderful.
And thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you got some juicy insights. If you would like to learn more about Sarah and her offerings, please go to solotogether.com, or you can look her up on LinkedIn. I'll have those in the show notes. And if you would like to learn more about my offerings in support of developing healthy boundaries, you have a couple options. You can go to explorelovingboundaries.com to set up a free call with me for a better boundaries breakthrough. You'll walk away with more clarity on where you're at and where you want to be and what's possible for you, as well as some deeper insights into some of the patterns that are kind of keeping you stuck. And if you want to get started on your own, you can go to boundariesthatfeelgood.com to download a free PDF that's jam-packed with a detailed breakdown of my signature gates method, as well as some really useful tools for things like grounding in your body. We're learning the difference between helping and rescuing, and it even includes some really powerful scripts for you to use in some tricky situations. Wherever you're at on your journey, I send you so much love and courage. And while you're here, please like, subscribe, and share this show so we can spread the love. Namaste.